The first time I told my family I wanted to open a food truck, they laughed in my face, literally. Around the long mahogany dining table of the Ortega family estate, with crystal glasses clinking and expensive wine flowing, my uncles, aunts, and even my own cousins burst out laughing. Only my grandmother looked at me without judgment. But she didn't say a word. So let me get this straight. My older cousin Daniel sneered, wiping his mouth with a linen napkin. You're giving up your marketing job at the tech firm to cook tacos in a truck? It's more than just tacos, I replied, feeling my cheeks flush. I've been perfecting Abula's birria recipe, the real one, the one she used to make before Mom changed it into something edible. My Aunt Louisa interrupted, smirking. Please, Elena, that recipe is a relic. People want fusion now, not whatever you're selling. The room laughed again. I glanced at my grandmother, who gave me a subtle nod. It was the only encouragement I needed. I stood up. You know what? I'm not asking for permission or money. I'm just telling you this is what I'm doing. I've already bought the truck. I launch next week. A stunned silence followed. Then my father sighed and muttered, another Ortega woman chasing a fantasy. I walked out, humiliated but determined. That was 3 years ago. Back then, I had no culinary degree, no investors, just a weathered food truck I bought at auction, and a tattered notebook full of my grandmother's original handwritten recipes, the ones my aunts had modernized. Beyond recognition for their polished, high-end family restaurant, Casa Ortega, they had turned Abula's soul food into soulless farm-to-table Mexican fusion, as the Yelp reviews called it. My food truck, Yel Elma the Soul, was a homage to the meals my grandmother had cooked when we were kids. Street-style birria tacos, smoky mole over hand-pressed tortillas, and homemade horchata with cinnamon and clove. I started in a tiny parking lot downtown, under a broken neon sign and next to a thrift store. My first customers were construction workers and broke college students. But word spread. The lines grew. Soon, local food bloggers took notice. Then came the food festival invites, then late-night news segments. By the end of year 1, Yel Elma was voted best food truck in the city. My family? Still silent. Not one word of congratulations. But I didn't need it. I was too busy expanding. 2 trucks. Then 3.by year 2, I'd built a small team and leased a commissary kitchen. I developed a brand warm, vibrant, rooted in tradition, authentic, and still, I never told them. Why would I? They'd made it clear I was beneath them, but they were about to learn that you don't laugh at someone chasing their dream, especially not someone like me, because that's the thing about being underestimated. While they ignore you, you get to build your empire in peace. The moment everything changed was a Tuesday. We had just parked Yel Elma at our usual spot next to a dusty alleyway behind a trendy bookstore when a well-known local food critic named Jordan Beck showed up, unannounced. He didn't say who he was, just waited in line like everyone else. I recognized him only after I handed him a plate of our signature birria tacos, slow-cooked, smoky, spiced just right, dripping with consomme, and saw the flash of his silver camera and signature leather notebook. My hands shook a little. I didn't ask questions. I just did what I always did, served with care, watched the smiles as the flavors hit, and then went back to pressing tortillas on the griddle. He didn't stay long. No conversation, no compliments, just a nod as he tossed his napkin and walked off. 2 days later, his review exploded online. This is the most soulful Mexican food I've eaten outside of Oaxaca. A no-frills truck parked behind a bookstore is serving dishes more flavorful than half the sit-down restaurants in the city. The birria tastes like history, like truth. Yel Elma isn't just a food truck. It's a movement. That day, we sold out in 2 hours. By week's end, we had offers to cater tech events, weddings, and music festivals. A Los Angeles-based food documentary crew emailed us asking to feature Yel Elma in their next episode, and that, ironically, was when my cousin Daniel texted me for the first time in years. Hey, saw the article. Congrats. Didn't realize the food truck was actually doing something. We should catch up sometime. I didn't reply. Instead, I poured my energy into growing. I hired a social media manager, got help streamlining operations, invested in better equipment, higher quality meat, biodegradable packaging. Every detail mattered now, but the thing I held closest was my grandmother's recipe book. I had it copied and sealed in a fireproof box. That book was my Bible. And then came the invitation. I didn't expect. It was an embossed envelope, delivered by hand to the food truck while we were parked at a downtown tech conference. Inside, a formal invitation to the 50th anniversary gala of Casa Ortega, my family's restaurant, the same restaurant that laughed me out of the room 3 years ago. The invitation was stiff, cold, and clearly sent out of obligation. But the real kicker was this: in celebration of our family's culinary legacy, we invite all Ortega descendants involved in the food industry to attend and speak. I laughed. Speak? Like I was some mascot? I nearly threw it away. But then, I remembered what my grandmother once told me, years ago when I was barely old enough to cook. When they tell you you don't belong at their table, build your own and let them come knocking when they're hungry. I decided to attend, not to gloat, not to fight, but to serve something they could never cook, a humble slice of truth. The night of the gala, I walked into the grand ballroom wearing a deep red silk dress and heels I'd only worn twice before. No makeup team, no entourage, just me. Heads turned, not because I looked flashy, but because I didn't look like the version of Elena they remembered. Daniel's wife stared. My Aunt Louisa blinked in shock. And Emma, the youngest cousin who'd once called my truck a rolling grease trap, nearly dropped her cocktail. Elena? She whispered. I smiled. Hi. You actually came? I did. You asked for Ortega chefs, right? A pause. Well, yeah, but, I mean, relax, I said, eyes scanning the room. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to feed. Because in the center of the ballroom, beneath chandeliers and gold linens, stood a row of food stations, one for each family member representing their version of Ortega cuisine. Emma had a booth with duck mole sliders. Louisa was plating foam ceviche tostadas. Daniel? A reinterpretation of tamales using sous vide lamb and quinoa. And then there was me, a simple wooden cart, brightly colored tablecloth, a hot griddle, and my grandmother's picture framed beside a bowl of fresh limes, just like the old days. And the food? Birria tacos, the real kind, the kind with juice dripping down your fingers, the meat marinated for 12 hours, the consomme rich and deep. One by one, the guests came, first out of curiosity, then craving. Even the chef from Casa Ortega's main kitchen snuck over with a plate. The line at my booth stretched. The entire ballroom. Louisa stared. Emma fumed. Daniel stopped by and said, You know, these are actually really good. I looked him dead in the eyes. They always were. And then, at the end of the night, my grandmother, walking slowly with her cane, came to my booth last. She took one bite and smiled. A long, soft smile that made all the ridicule melt away. You did it, she whispered. You brought the soul back. I blinked back tears. The soul was never gone. It had just been pushed aside for things like foam ceviche. But I had a plan now, not to win a family contest, but to win the real war, because while my family was busy playing prestige chefs, I had just signed a deal to buy the restaurant chain they all worked for, including Casa Ortega. The week after the gala, I barely slept. Not from nerves but from planning. The traction we got that night was like jet fuel. The documentary crew moved our feature to top priority. Our socials blew up. Orders doubled, then tripled. I had lines down the block, people deeming from 3 states away asking if we'd franchise. The food wasn't just good anymore, it was a movement. But while the world was noticing Yel Alma, I had my eyes set on something far older. Casa Ortega, my family's legacy restaurant, once the pinnacle of prestige, was crumbling behind its glossy exterior. I'd known it for a while, thanks to a mole I'd planted long ago. The head accountant, Ruben, he was a good guy, just underpaid and tired of Daniel's arrogance. Every month, he sent me the real financials. Margins shrinking, costs rising, foot traffic down. Even their investors were pulling out, especially after our birria went viral and El Alma started popping up on every top 10 bites in the city list. Now, most people would gloat, but I didn't want Casa Ortega to die. I wanted to own it, and I wanted them to have no idea I was the one buying it. 2 years earlier, I quietly set up a shell company under the name Azul Pacific Holdings. It was clean, quiet, anonymous, and well-funded. I'd poured nearly all of my food truck profits into it, reinvested every catering check, even took a second mortgage on a fixer-upper I bought and flipped. People thought I was reckless, turning away big-name restaurant offers to chase something sentimental. But I wasn't chasing nostalgia. I was preparing for takeover. Through Azul Pacific, I began acquiring minority shares in Casa Ortega's parent group. A little here, a little there, quiet moves, smart lawyers, airtight and das.by the time I hit 38% ownership, they still didn't know, but I was ready to make the final push. The moment came faster than I expected. Ruben called one evening, nervous. Elena? He whispered over the phone, Daniel's been trying to secure a bridge loan to cover payroll this quarter. He's out of time. If they don't get emergency capital by end of next week, they'll default on their operating agreement. I hung up and called my team at Azul Pacific. Start talks with the board. Offer a bailout but only in exchange for 51% ownership and executive control. And don't mention my name. By Friday, the deal was signed. They had no choice. The board was desperate. Daniel thought he'd weather the storm with charm and a little creative accounting. He didn't realize the new majority stakeholder was the girl he once said had a hobby, not a business. I didn't announce the takeover right away. Instead, I visited Casa Ortega quietly the next Sunday. I walked through the back kitchen in jeans and sneakers, nodding at the familiar faces: cooks, dishwashers, staff who remembered me from before. The food truck. They smiled wide. Elena? No way. I smiled too. I'm back. But in a different way. Then I walked into the executive office. Daniel was there, feet on the desk, drink in hand, laughing at something on his phone. He looked up, annoyed. Do you even work here anymore? This is a restricted. I dropped the folder on his desk. The one with the signed takeover papers. He opened it, eyes darting over the legal seals, the ink still fresh. What the hell is this? That, I said, is your new boss. You? No, this is Azul Pacific Holdings, which I own. Every share, every decision, every dollar. He shot up from his chair, face pale. You're lying. Call the board, I said. They'll confirm it. He didn't have to. He knew. It was real. He dropped back into his seat like the wind had left his body. You planned this? I built this. I walked him through the changes. The restaurant would be rebranded but retain the Ortega name respectfully. Staff would get fair wages, better hours, and profit sharing. His executive privileges were suspended immediately. Effective today, your title is head of menu development, I said. You'll be working under our new executive chef Luis. From my truck. Daniel blinked. You're demoting me? I'm offering you a second chance, I said, voice calm. Same one you never gave me. He didn't answer, but the silence said enough. I left the office and walked out to the main dining room, where customers were trickling in for the Sunday brunch service. My grandmother was sitting near the window. She hadn't seen me yet, so I walked over, leaned down, and whispered, Your girl just bought the house. She looked up and smiled. About time, she said. Now go clean it up. I laughed, and then I got to work. The following Monday, I officially took over Casa Ortega, but I didn't just want control. I wanted transformation, because power without purpose was never the goal. For years, my family clung to tradition like a life raft in a rising tide. The old-school Mexican fine dining-style white tablecloths, stuffy silence, overpriced tequila lists had become tired, rigid. It was a relic of the past, clinging to prestige while ignoring evolution. I didn't want to erase the name. I wanted to redefine it. My first move? Renovation. Out went the pretentious gold and cream decor. In came warm terracotta walls, handcrafted Talavera tiles from Oaxaca, and a vibrant open kitchen where guests could see and smell the food being made with passion. The velvet rope toast stand, gone. We replaced it with a hand-painted mural of my grandmother's pueblo in Jalisco, the same one where she made tamales by candlelight every winter. A place of humble pride. We didn't need velvet to feel important. We needed heart. Second move? The menu. Daniel fought me on this. He clung to his lobster enchiladas and tequila foam like they were sacred texts. I let him argue. I listened. And then I invited him to Yell Alma's prep kitchen the next morning. There, he watched my team cook our now famous smoked birria tacos, our mole empanadas, our chili lime churros that had half of Instagram in a frenzy. When he tasted them, he didn't say anything, but he didn't argue again. Together begrudgingly we began crafting a hybrid menu, a bridge between generations. I brought Luis, my truck's executive chef, into the fold. Daniel stayed on, humbled and surprisingly helpful. For the first time, we were cooking together instead of competing. Third move? The team. Many of the old staff stayed, but I gave everyone a chance to reinvent themselves. Maria, the shy Sue's chef, who'd been overlooked for years, became our head of development. Ruben, the accountant who helped me track the downfall in secret, now led operations with a 10% profit share. We offered employee equity options, better benefits, mental health days, and language classes for front-of-house workers wanting to grow into management, because no business is worth building if you forget the people who keep it running. By the third month, we soft-launched the new Casa Ortega. We didn't call it a reopening. We called it a rebirth, and people noticed. Line snaked around the corner. Food critics raved. The press dubbed it the soulful reinvention of a family legacy. Even Eater called it the hottest reservation in town. Isn't a new concept, it's a reborn classic with a rebel's heart. Daniel stopped by my office after reading that article. He stood awkwardly, hands in his pockets, then muttered, "You were right about everything." I didn't gloat. Instead, I said, "We both were wrong at different times. Let's just get it right now." He nodded. "For what it's worth, you're running this place better than I ever could." "You helped build it," I offered. "But you built something bigger," he replied. "Something real." It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever heard from him, and honestly, it was enough. That week, I invited the entire family to a private dinner at the restaurant. Everyone came: my parents, cousins, even a few old-school business friends of Daniel's who hadn't seen me in years. They were expecting a nostalgic tribute to the old Ortega charm. What they got was a feast of flavors they couldn't stop talking about. They saw the open kitchen, alive with energy. They heard the mariachi fusion band softly playing in the courtyard. They tasted dishes with fire and depth, made with love, not ego. And when dessert came, my grandmother's original tres leches cake, served with a small note that said, "To the roots that gave us wings." Even my father got misty-eyed. Afterward, my mother pulled me aside. "Elena," she said quietly, "I used to worry you were throwing your future away." I smiled. "I know. But now I see you weren't throwing it away. You were just building it differently." And then she hugged me tighter than she had in years. Later that night, I stood alone in the courtyard, listening to the buzz of laughter and clinking glasses inside. Luis came up beside me, holding 2 cups of cafetiala. "To the boss," he toasted. "No," I said, lifting my cup. "To the legacy." Because that's what I finally understood. This wasn't just about revenge. It wasn't about proving Daniel wrong or outshining the past. It was about honoring the heart of what we were always supposed to be: a family, a flavor, a story. And now that story was just getting started. 1 year after I took over Casa Ortega, the restaurant hit milestones no one in my family thought possible. We were awarded a Michelin Bib Gourmand. The New York Times called us a revolution in modern Mexican cuisine. And most importantly, we were profitable, very profitable. We opened 2 more locations, one in LA, another in Austin, each blending traditional warmth with modern vibrancy. The original location, however, remained the heart of it all, the soul. But through it all, one thing remained missing: my name. The sign still read Casa Ortega in the same ornate script Daniel had insisted on decades ago, a name tied to his ego, our family's image, and an era that had overlooked me. One afternoon, I sat at the edge of the courtyard with my grandmother's old recipe journal in my lap. Its pages were stained, worn, but every dish in that book now lived on our menu. In some form, Luis sat across from me, sipping limonada. "You ever going to change the sign?" he asked casually. I closed the book. "I think I've earned it." That night, I stayed late. When the restaurant emptied, I went out front and stared at the faded letters. Casa Ortega. It wasn't just a name, it was a monument to everything that came before, both the good and the hurt. And I knew I wasn't erasing the past. I was building from it. The next week, with my family gathered once again in the courtyard, I unveiled the new sign. It still said Casa Ortega, but underneath it, in clean gold letters, "A Culinary Experience by Elena Ortega." My name, my story, finally visible. Daniel was quiet the whole time. When the sign was revealed, he stood up and walked toward it. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he turned to me and simply nodded. "That looks right," he said. That was the day I knew the past no longer defined me. A few months later, I was invited to speak at a national culinary summit. The theme: legacy and innovation. I stepped on stage wearing the same chef's jacket I'd worn the first day on my food truck. No designer heels, no pretense, just me. I told my story: the mockery, the cold shoulders, the rejection, the grit, the transformation. When I finished, the room erupted into applause. Later, a young chef approached me with tears in her eyes. They said my food was too simple, that no one would take me seriously unless I went fine dining. But you changed everything for me. And in that moment, I saw my old self in her. I saw the power of what one act of courage can ripple into. Today, I still run the business, but I also teach, mentor, and fund other women, especially Latinas starting in food, because too many voices like mine were told to stay small, to stay silent. But I've learned, the best revenge isn't just success, it's making room at the table for everyone they tried to keep out. One evening, while walking through the original location after closing, I paused near the kitchen. The old bell on the back door rang. It was my mother. She held a warm container of her homemade arroz con leche. No words, just a soft smile, a kiss on the cheek, and a whisper, "You did good, Mija." We sat under the courtyard lights and shared dessert in silence, because sometimes, the quietest moments say the most. A month later, Forbes released an article titled, "From Street Truck to Star Chef, How Elena Ortega Reclaimed Her Family's Crown." I didn't care about the headline, but I loved the last line. She didn't just inherit the legacy, she rewrote it with fire, soul, and a name no one would ever forget again.